Welcome to Reddit Wife Secrets. Enjoy your viewing. The suitcase was tucked under the bed, hidden behind a dust ruffle, like a ticking time bomb. I checked my reflection one last time. Professional blazer, muted lipstick. The image of a woman headed to a boring corporate seminar in the city. I'll call you when I get to Mom's, okay? I said, leaning down to kiss Mark on the cheek. He didn't look up from his laptop. He was deep into some spreadsheet, his brow furrowed in that way that usually made me feel guilty, but today, it just made me feel invisible. Tell her I say hi, he murmured, his fingers tapping away. And drive safe. The weather report said rain. I will. I lied. The lie felt heavy, like a stone in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to my mother's house 3 hours north. I was heading to a boutique hotel downtown to meet Alex. My ex, the man who knew exactly how to make me feel seen when Mark was too busy being a provider. It was supposed to be a work trip, a clean, easy excuse that covered my tracks. Mark knew I had a big project coming up. He wouldn't question a few days of absence. The drive was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. When I reached the hotel, Alex was already there. Leaning against his silver sedan, he looked exactly the same. The same messy hair, the same crooked smile that always suggested a secret. You actually came, he said, taking my bag. I told him I'm at my mother's, I whispered, glancing around as if the pavement had ears. He has no reason to doubt me. For the first 24 hours, the world outside didn't exist. No emails, no domestic chores, no Mark. It was a bubble of nostalgia and stolen glances. But bubbles are fragile. The crack happened on Tuesday evening. We were sitting in a small, dimly lit bistro 3 blocks from the hotel. My phone vibrated in my purse. I ignored it. Then it vibrated again. And again. I excused myself to the restroom and pulled it out. 7 missed calls. Mark. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dialed him back, my voice trembling as I tried to sound sleepy, like I was lounging on my mother's sofa. Hey honey. Everything okay? I was just about to nap. Stop, Mark said. His voice wasn't angry. It was cold. A terrifying, hollow kind of cold I had never heard in the 8 years we'd been together. Mark. What's wrong? I called your mother, Sarah, he said. The silence that followed was deafening. I called because the pipe under the kitchen sink burst. I wanted to ask her where you kept the emergency shut-off wrench since you weren't answering. She was confused. She asked me why I thought you were there. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees hit the tiled floor of the restroom stall. Mark, listen, I can explain. I just needed space. She told me everything, Sarah. Or rather, she told me nothing, which said everything. His voice cracked just slightly, the only sign of his breaking heart. And then I did something I'm not proud of. I logged into our shared cloud account. I saw the GPS pings from your work tablet. You're at the Laurent Hotel, aren't you? Mark, please, don't come home tonight, he whispered. Actually, don't come home at all. Your things are already on the porch. And Sarah. I called your boss. I told him you wouldn't be finishing that project. Since you used the company card for the room, they were very interested to hear you weren't actually on a business trip. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the sounds of the bistro, the clinking of wine glasses and laughter, feeling like a mockery. I had gambled my entire life for a weekend of feeling young again, and in one 5-minute phone call, the house of cards had collapsed. When I walked back to the table, Alex looked at my face and knew. What happened? He knows? I said, my voice barely a whisper. He knows everything. He called my mom. He called my job. Alex's expression shifted. The romantic, playful look vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. He wasn't the hero of this story. He was a man who liked the thrill of a secret, but he didn't want the mess of a reality. Your job? Alex asked, his grip tightening on his glass. Sarah, you told me this was handled. I realized then that while Mark had lost a wife, I had lost everything. My reputation, my career, my home, and the respect of the woman I had used as a shield. I was standing in a beautiful dress in a luxury hotel, and I had absolutely nowhere to go. The drive back was the longest 2 hours of my life. Alex didn't offer to come with me. In fact, the moment he realized the mess had spilled over into my professional life, his warmth evaporated. He gave me a stiff hug, muttered something about needing to let things cool down, and watched from the hotel lobby as I pulled away. I was truly alone. As I turned onto our quiet suburban street, the headlights hit the front of the house. Mark wasn't kidding. 3 large suitcases and several cardboard boxes were piled haphazardly on the porch. It was raining. A cold, miserable drizzle that was soaking through the fabric of my bags. I parked the car and walked up the driveway, my heels clicking on the wet pavement like a funeral march. I tried my key in the lock. It didn't turn. He had already changed the deadbolt. Mark! I banged on the door, my voice cracking. Mark, open the door! We need to talk! You can't just throw me out like this! The porch light flickered on. I saw his silhouette through the frosted glass of the door, but he didn't open it. The talk ended when you checked into that hotel, Sarah. His voice came through the wood, muffled but steady. I've spent the last 4 hours looking at our bank statements. Every late night at the office. Over the last month. It all makes sense now. I was the one working overtime to pay for our future, while you were spending our present on him. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything, I screamed, shivering as the rain started to soak through my blazer. If it didn't mean anything, then you destroyed our marriage for nothing, he replied. That makes it worse, not better. Your mother is on her way to pick you up. I told her I wouldn't leave your stuff in the rain for long, but I won't have it under my roof. I felt a surge of panic. My mother. Mark, no please. Just then, a pair of headlights turned the corner. It was my mother's old station wagon. She pulled up behind my car, and even through the windshield, I could see the disappointment etched into her face. She didn't get out right away. She just sat there, looking at me. Her daughter, standing in the rain, surrounded by the wreckage of a life I had treated too lightly. When she finally stepped out, she didn't have a hug for me. She had a trash bag. Start putting your clothes in this, she said, her voice flat. The cardboard boxes are getting soggy. Mom, he's being insane, I sobbed, reaching for her arm. He's kicking me out. She pulled her arm away. No, Sarah. You walked out. You just didn't think he'd close the door behind you. You used me. You told him you were with me, making me an accomplice in your lies. Do you have any idea how it felt to have Mark call me, worried sick because a pipe burst, only for me to realize my daughter had made a fool out of both of us? She started grabbing my damp clothes and shoving them into the bag. Mark watched from the window for a moment, then closed the curtains. That was the finality of it. The man who used to bring me tea every morning and rub my feet after a long day didn't even want to see my face. We loaded the car in silence. My mother drove me back to her house, the very place I had lied about being. The irony was a bitter pill. When we got inside, she pointed to the guest room. You can stay here for a few days until you find an apartment, she said. But Sarah, I'm not on your side. I loved Mark like a son. You didn't just break his heart, you broke this family's trust. And I heard about your job. Is it true? I sank onto the edge of the guest bed, my damp hair clinging to my neck. They put me on administrative leave. My boss said using the company card for a personal liaison is a violation of the ethics code. They're probably gonna fire me. My mother looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw no pity in her eyes. You had a man who loved you, a home, and a career. You traded it all for a ghost from your past who wouldn't even drive you home tonight. I hope those 3 days were worth it. She walked out and shut the door. I sat in the dark, the silence of the house weighing more than any argument ever could. I reached for my phone to call Alex. Anyone, but I saw he had blocked my number. He had deleted his social media, too. He had vanished back into the shadows, leaving me to deal with the bright, harsh light of the morning. I was 32 years old, unemployed, and sleeping in my childhood bedroom with nothing but 3 suitcases of wet clothes. Mark hadn't just propped me up. For a lesson, he had effectively deleted me from his life. And the worst part was, as I looked at the ceiling, I realized I had given him the pen to do it. The following morning didn't bring any relief. The sunlight streaming through the floral curtains of my old bedroom felt like an intruder. My head throbbed, and the smell of damp wool from my soaked suitcases filled the room. I reached for my phone out of habit, expecting a "good morning, beautiful" text from Mark, or even a check-in from Alex. There was nothing, just a notification from my banking app account status changed. Mark had moved our joint savings into a separate, frozen escrow account. He wasn't stealing it, he was too disciplined for that. But he was ensuring I couldn't use, or, money to fund my new, ruined life. I was down to the few $100s in my personal checking account, and a credit card that was dangerously close to its limit. I spent the morning in my mother's kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like ash. She moved around me as if I were a ghost, cleaning the counters and avoiding eye-to-eye contact. I have to go to the office, I finally said, my voice raspy. I have to explain that the company card thing was a misunderstanding. If I lose this job, Mom, I'm underwater. She stopped scrubbing and looked at me. Actions have echoes. Sarah. You didn't just lie to Mark. You lied to the people who sign your paychecks. You told them you were at a conference. They called the hotel to confirm your attendance for the tax write-off, and the hotel told them you weren't on the guest list for any seminar. Mark didn't even have to do much. He just pointed them in the right direction. I drove to the office with my heart in my throat. I had spent 5 years building my reputation there. I was the reliable one. When I walked through the glass doors, the receptionist, who usually beamed at me, looked down at her keyboard immediately. My boss, Mr. Henderson, didn't even invite me to sit down. He stood behind his desk, holding a printout of my expense report. "Sarah, I'll keep this brief," he said. His voice was disappointed, not angry, which felt so much worse. "This isn't just about the money. It's about the fact that you used company resources to facilitate a personal trip while claiming to be on official business. That's fraud. Even if you pay back every cent, the trust is gone. We've decided to terminate your contract for cause." "Mr. Henderson, please," I pleaded, my hands shaking. "I'm going through a divorce." I wasn't thinking straight. "I know you're going through a divorce," he said coldly. "Your husband called to apologize for your unprofessional behavior." He sounded devastated, Sarah. "Honestly, the fact that he felt the need to apologize for you says everything I need to know about who was at fault here." I walked out of the building with a cardboard box containing my stapler, a desk plant, and a framed photo of me and Mark from our vacation in Italy. I sat in my car and cried until I couldn't breathe. Mark was being surgical. He wasn't just leaving me, he was dismantling the pillars of my identity. By the time I got back to my mother's, there was a man in a suit waiting by the porch. "Process server." "Sarah Miller?" he asked. I took the envelope, divorce papers. But it wasn't just a standard filing. He was suing for the house, the car, and even the dog, citing my extravagant dissipation of marital assets and infidelity. He had documented every dinner, every hotel drink, and every mile I'd put on the car during my work trip. I called him. To my surprise, he answered on the third ring. "Mark, please?" I sobbed into the phone. "You're taking everything? I lost my job today. I have nothing left." "You have exactly what you chose, Sarah," Mark said. His voice was eerily calm, the sound of a man who had already mourned and moved on to the logistics phase. "You wanted a life without the boredom of our marriage. You wanted the excitement of Alex. Well, here it is. You're free. You don't have the house to clean, you don't have the husband to check in with, and you don't have the job that kept you so stressed." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I believe you're sorry you got caught," he replied. "But I saw the photos you took on your cloud, Sarah. The ones from the bistro. You didn't look like a woman who was sorry or confused. You looked like a woman who thought she was smarter than everyone else. It turns out you aren't." The line clicked shut. I looked around my childhood room. The walls were covered in old posters from a girl who had so many dreams. Now, I was a woman who had traded a decade of security for 72 hours of a lie. I had no job, no husband, and even my own mother was counting the days until I was gone. Mark hadn't just punished me. He had simply stepped aside and let me fall into the pit I dug for myself. The mediation meeting took place in a sterile, glass-walled office downtown. I had spent my last few dollars on a professional blouse, trying to salvage some shred of the woman I used to be. I looked exhausted. Mark, on the other hand, looked impeccable. He was sitting next to his lawyer, a folder of neatly organized documents in front of him. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked indifferent, which was 1,000 times more painful. "Let's get to it?" Mark's lawyer started. "Given the evidence of the misuse of marital funds and the circumstances of the job loss, my client is offering a flat settlement. You walk away with your personal belongings and the sedan. He keeps the house, the savings, and the retirement accounts." "That's not fair," I stammered, looking at Mark. "I helped pay for that house for 5 years, Mark. I have no income. How am I supposed to live?" Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were like flint. "You should have asked Alex that before you went to the Laurent. Is he not helping you? I assumed he'd be thrilled to have you full-time now." I looked down at my hands. I hadn't told anyone that Alex had completely vanished. He hadn't just blocked me, he had moved. I'd driven by his place a night ago, desperate for a place to stay, only to find a for-lease sign. He was a nomad, a man who lived for the chase but fled from the catch. He was never going to be my safety net. "He's not in the picture?" I whispered. Mark let out a short, dry laugh. "Of course he isn't. Men like him only want what belongs to someone else. Once it's broken, they don't want the pieces. You threw away a diamond for a piece of glass that cut you the moment you touched it. The mediation lasted another hour, but my spirit was already gone. I signed the papers. I had no leverage, no money for a long legal battle, and no energy left to fight. I was signing away my home, my stability, and my future. As we walked out into the hallway, I stopped him one last time. Did you ever really love me, Mark? Or was it always just about the contract for you? Mark stopped and turned. For a brief second, I saw a flash of the man I had married, the man who used to hold me when I had nightmares. I loved you more than anything, Sarah. That's why I couldn't just let this go. If I had stayed, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if every work trip, or late night, was another lie. I loved you enough to build a life with you, and I respect myself enough to not let you destroy the rest of it. He walked toward the elevator without looking back. I walked out to my car, the only thing I had left. On the passenger seat sat a final notice from my bank. My mother had given me until the end of the month to find a new place. I had 3 weeks to find a job with a tarnished reputation and a resume that had a giant, burning hole where my integrity used to be. I sat there for a long time, watching the city move on without me. I thought about that first night at the hotel with Alex, how the champagne had tasted, how the lights looked from the balcony, and how free I felt. It was the most expensive drink I had ever had. It had cost me my home, my career, my family, and my soul. I started the engine. There was nowhere to go but forward, into a life that felt cold, quiet, and entirely of my own making. I had played the game, thinking I was the one holding all the cards, only to realize too late that the person I was playing against was the only person who had ever truly been on my side.